What is up, YouTube? Let's see here, if we get everything set up, pop out the chat. Let's pull up Wall Street Oasis. What's up, everybody? Hey guys, thanks for joining. Again, as usual, welcome to Wall Street Oasis office hours, Tuesdays at 12 Eastern, 9 Pacific. We are just getting started. Going live on YouTube, going live on Instagram. You guys can join however you like. Please support the channel or the account by liking. But yeah, we're here. I'm here for you guys just to basically answer any and all questions that that come your way. First off, hope everybody had an awesome Memorial Day weekend. No, I had a great weekend. Went to the pool yesterday. It was 90 degrees here in California, and got to go with the kids to the pool, this pool nearby in San Jose, and it was a blast. So that was fun. They're not quite big enough yet to go on the big slides, but that'll be fun when that happens. My oldest is still a little too short. One sec, I see an issue. Sorry guys, just setting something to the dev team. Hey everybody, how's everybody going? How's everybody doing this Tuesday? So this live stream or this office hours really is simply to answer any questions any of you have related to careers, related to Wall Street Oasis, related to anything that you don't really get the chance to ask from time to time. So we'll take the first question from YouTube. Keith Lee, thanks for the question. Keith Lee asks, what type of modeling should I learn if I want to work in debt capital markets? So debt capital markets still considered typically under investment banking. You're raising debt, right? You're in the capital markets team, helping companies issue bonds and whatnot. So in terms of what type of modeling, first you should really know the basics to make sure you're efficient in certain programs like Excel and PowerPoint. So I would make sure you have an Excel modeling course, a PowerPoint course. You can see those here under courses. I'd say Excel modeling. PowerPoint are kind of your skill development or your foundations. And then specifically for modeling, when you're modeling debt, you still need to be able to understand how to do a three-statement financial statement modeling. Or three statements interlinked. And then I would say if you're going to be in debt capital markets, I'd actually say the LBO course is pretty interesting because it shows you lots of different types of debt and how those are modeled out with, PIK interest versus, discounts versus that. So, I mean, I think you need to really understand the basics first off, but secondly, you need to basically have a little bit of understanding of the different type of debt structures and capital structures. So I'd say probably first Excel, then financial statement modeling, then LBO. But valuation and DCF is still really important as well. So I would focus on really the main cores that you see in our elite modeling package. Let's see here. Sorry, I see an issue on the site. I'm texting our dev team. Hi, I have a question. I'm a sophomore at a Target school, but I am late to the recruiting game. Are there any banks? It's funny that you're a sophomore and you're late to the recruiting game. It's pretty crazy. This is from Joanne. Are there any banks still actively recruiting for 2022 summer analyst roles in M&A, ECM, or DCM? Hey, Joanne. Thanks for joining the office hours. So in terms of the banks active recruiting for 2022. Largely, it's done. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't still be actively trying to get into summer 2022. You're at a sophomore, so it's not the end of the world if you don't get the best banking internship at the top bank or the right group. What matters most now is that you find something for next summer. And so it's not crazy late in the game where, you have a full year before summer 2022. So yes, most of the traditional recruiting and the traditional banks have wrapped up. That doesn't mean there aren't a lot of boutique banks, even lower middle market banks that haven't, or may have a new spot kind of pop up during the year. So what's most important is that you're actually broadening your reach, and actually you're broadening your reach, and you have kind of built up a huge network, so that when those positions or internships do come up, you kind of are top of mind when they reach out to you. So that's what I would do, is make sure you just continue, number one, applying to like small regional boutiques, anything you can get at this point that's relevant to if you want to go banking or M&A, ECM, DCM, anything you can get at this point. Don't be picky, even if you're at a target school. A lot of people make this mistake thinking, I'm at a target school, I should be at a top bank or whatever. No, just get the right experience or some relevant experience on your background, because it's super competitive even at targets. And what's going to set you apart potentially and help you get that junior role is making sure you get that sophomore summer internship or something related. Even if you can't get banking, do something finance oriented that shows you're interesting. What I'll say is also that I believe you're female based on your picture and your name, Joanne Liu. What I would say is that there are diversity programs that you could also try to utilize, kind of coming up. There's and you're on YouTube, so I can show you female diversity programs. I'm just doing a quick search on WSO to see if I can pull up here. So there's obviously some threads where people aren't very happy about some of these diversity programs, but there are here, I'm going to try a different search. I'm going to say list of diversity programs. Let's see here. Here we go. 43 diversity recruiting programs at investment banks, the most exhaustive list. So I'd look at this thread because there's a lot in here, and I think there are future women leaders at Blackstone, emerging women's program at BAML. Let's see here. Barclays sophomore springboard, top talent women's mentor program at Credit Suisse. You should be leveraging, Joanne, if you haven't, you should be leveraging all of these. And if you haven't gotten into any of them, then yeah, I would try your best to get in for this upcoming year, because maybe you can tell me, did you even do that, or maybe you did and it didn't land you an early internship. Let's see what else we got here. I'm going to move on, Joanne, but definitely take a look at that thread, because there's a lot of programs, and these are just the ones listed in this thread. There's 43 listed here. If you do some creative Googling, I'm sure you can find some others, but that's one other way you can kind of try to build up a strong network really fast. Let me get a little water here. San asks, hey Patrick, if I network my way into internships, are these internships usually paid, unpaid, or is it a different company? I'm worried I may not cover the cost to go to London for internships. San, good question. So this totally depends on the company. I know there are labor laws around internships and payments. So, and for the Instagram people, I'm sharing my screen up on YouTube. If you want to join YouTube Live, I'm up there, and so you can follow along on my screen if you care about that. If not, you can look at the beautiful green backdrop. So San, yeah, it totally just depends on the company. Some are paid, some are unpaid, some are kind of under the table paid. It just depends how small the bank is sometimes you can just work with one or two people or a tiny little shop that will pay you a little bit or like a stipend. In terms of like how you can hustle on the side, if it's unpaid or very lowly paid, I would even consider for the right internship if it's somewhat related to where you want to end up with. I know this may be unpopular from some people, but I would say getting the internship experience on your resume with relevant experience is so valuable that you could even be willing to pay for that, and it's going to give you probably a much bigger leg up than like even your school, unless you're at a top school with a high GPA. But my point is, building those internships and stacking those internships, what I call it, is actually super valuable in your job search. So any way you can cover the costs, if you can get something relevant to where you want to go eventually, try to make it happen, even if it's a low paid, even if it means just renting out a room somewhere, and having to commute into London from like an hour away where it's cheaper to live. Even consider doing that. Here we go. Let's see what else we got here. I haven't answered any from Instagram, so I'm gonna take a look what we got here. Hey, I'm a singer and I would love to join you. Okay, I don't know. I know nothing about SafeMoon, but looks sketchy is from what I've seen. Amjad asks, why do people on your platform trash anything other than investment banking or private equity? Amjad, it's a good question. So I think there's a vocal minority that you hear in the threads, sometimes kind of looking down on careers outside of investment banking and private equity. But it's really a minority. I think the vast majority of monkeys on Wall Street Oasis actually do look at corporate finance, real estate finance. They look at corporate development. They look at trading, hedge funds, management consulting, asset management. They look at all these jobs as incredibly, not just incredibly rewarding, but they can be incredibly lucrative. They can be great paths. And so I think generalizing across the whole population is not really fair. I think where you see a lot of the IB or PE kind of putting that up on a pedestal is usually from the younger users that are not certified, and they're a little less mature in terms of understanding some of the other opportunities that don't exist outside their bubble. So I think another part of the issue is, Wall Street Oasis started as iBanking Oasis, and private equity has kind of been seen as the natural next progression of people who are naturally risk averse. So investment banking and private equity is considered the path, or investment banking, private equity, MBA, back to private equity or hedge funds. But that's, as you can see from my my podcast, I've done over 160. I've had over 160 discussions with people from a wide variety of paths, and very frequently the most successful people do not follow that IB to PE path. So we do have a lot of those episodes where people are going that way, but we also highlight a lot of other different types of careers, finance careers there. So you can kind of get a sense of, there's people in transaction advisory services, consulting, corporate finance, corp dev, all and tons more. And there's also lots of little sub niche industries in there that people should really consider. So if there's something that piques their interest, if you really are into something, if you know that earlier on, it's actually a huge advantage. You can start building up your network within that niche, and it's a big upside. Jeff asks on YouTube, what are some of the exit ops from a fintech startup as an investment analyst? Jeff, tough question, because I don't really know what an investment analyst at a fintech startup is doing. If you're, as an investment analyst, if you're actually doing fundamental analysis and like looking at valuation and stuff like that, it just depends on what skills you're developing. If you're developing financial modeling skills, if you're developing the ability to analyze companies and businesses and industries, then I'd say your exit ops would most likely be equity research, hedge funds, small hedge funds, asset management potentially, or just sticking at the startup and hopefully it's growing fast enough where you can stick around. I mean, that's usually when you're going to a startup, I don't really see the exit op of being like trying to get back in traditional finance. Maybe the exit is you ride that fintech startup up through IPO, or you get through Series A or B, and then you jump to another startup and get more options or whatnot. So that's the other thing. I see a lot of these people starting at these startups. It's kind of silly to look at exit ops because it's kind of a very binary, like either works or doesn't type of career choice. So typically the exit is to another startup or either maybe later stage. So it's a little bit less risky as you get older. Let's see, here we go. Our project management, says Keithley. Thanks, Keithley. Let's see what else we got from Instagram here. Chase asked, Patrick, do you have any affiliates promoting WSL? Hey, Chase, we do. We have a few. It's not a big consideration of ours, but Chase, I emailed you back. I think you sent me a message about your service. And I actually talked with your guys before. I think I'm waiting on an email back from them. Let's see here. Okay, here's an interesting question. Charlie says, I'm active duty working on an executive MBA while finishing my service commitment. Because I'm working full-time on top of my MBA, I'm unable to complete an internship this summer. Any advice? Hey, Charlie. If you're active duty, I think it's okay if you can't do an internship because you're doing the MBA and whatnot. I don't know where that executive MBA is from or how that executive MBA places after. So I would try to understand that. I mean, I would have told you before you go to the MBA program to try to get a better sense of where you actually place. But the military connection is a very strong network. So if you are active duty and you're doing the MBA, I think almost 80% of your time should be spent like just meeting people and talking to people across the street to figure out how to get into those recruiting channels. I know recruiting's coming up for MBAs. I know it's probably different for executive MBAs, maybe a little bit tougher if you're a little older. But I know for MBAs, recruiting happens super early on. So, by the end of the summer, as people are joining their MBA programs in the first year for that next summer internship, it happens almost right out of the gate. So you are in a good time right now in the next few months to hit it hard, hit all your contacts, build as many connections as you can, and then basically try to get into those recruiting channels. But it's going to be less about dropping. It's going to be less about dropping your resume. Oh, sorry, you said any advice for someone pursuing a post-MBA associate position with a non-standard background like mine? Well, I don't know what your non-standard background is, but it's going to be tough if the executive MBA isn't getting you those interviews by the simple fact of like being in that MBA program. I wouldn't have gone to an MBA that can't get you into, with on-campus recruiting or any of that stuff. Maybe that's an advantage because of COVID and maybe there is no on-campus yet. But in the next 3 to 4 months, I expect, at least in the US, there to be a lot of on-campus sessions and those to kind of be opening back up. So I try to figure out a way, if the MBA portion of your executive MBA, maybe the MBA is a decent feeder into banks. So I try to go to those info sessions, talk to the Career Center, figure out any way you can possibly kind of get in on those to try and get yourself into those recruiting channels. That's your best bet. Because if you miss that boat, if you miss that summer associate internship boat, it's going to be super, super tough because it's like one and done. Although I'll say probably in about 3 to 5 weeks time, there is likely going to be a mass exodus from investment banks by analysts and associates, or not associates, but more analysts. So they're going to be looking for a lot of junior talent, probably a lot more than they even realize, a lot more than they expect, given how bad work from home has been. So you really have a shot. I think this year is going to be a really weird year with a ton of openings, lateral openings, all this stuff. So all of you people who think I'm non-traditional, I don't have a shot, I think you're wrong. I think if you really present yourself well and you're building up these these connections right now so that people realize like you're hungry and you want it and you're knowledgeable, when those openings come, they're going to be like, yeah, come for an interview. and I think a lot of you are going to end up getting in if you're prepared. There's still going to be competition, of course. Here we go. Keith Lee Jarvis asked an interesting question. What's your general thoughts on MBA associates? I assume you mean Keith Lee for investment banking. I think they probably have the hardest job in the investment bank, or one of the hardest jobs. It's super stressful because they have to manage up and down. They have to manage down to people who are more skilled than them at their job. So they're managing down to analysts that tend to have either been on the job for 1 or 2 years and been living in Excel and PowerPoint. So they tend to be more skilled. So they're tasked with managing people who are more skilled with them, and then they have to manage up in a new potential career where they don't really know what's even going on. So it's a super tough role for MBA associates. So like I think the banks still like to hire them because they see them as better potential long-term sales people, which, banking is eventually a sales role. So I think they do have those skills. They tend to be better presenters. They tend to be a little bit more polished than the analysts, whatnot, yada, yada. But what are my thoughts on them? I think, I understand why the banks hire them. And I understand why a lot of MBA associates burn out and leave. I think it's probably a super low hit rate for people who can stick it out. I know I had an associate when I was at Rothschild who had joined from HBS. He lasted like 4 months at Rothschild, and he was way out of his element, and I was way out of my element. I was a new analyst coming out from a liberal arts college from Williams, so I was a disaster. He was trying to manage me by like managing me, but he didn't have enough of the skills to teach me, and so we saw that happening over and over again on all his deal teams. And eventually the higher ups were like, this guy's not cutting it. He's just trying to dump all the work on the analysts. And unfortunately, he didn't have what really is the key for the associates is to act like an analyst and to get buy-in from the analysts so that they like you. That means not ditching them with all the work. That means chipping in wherever you can, and really being more of a grunt for the first year, rather than seeing yourself as superior to the analysts who are, typically working 90+ hour weeks and dying for any sleep. So yeah, that's my thought. Let's see what else we got. If you're asking me what my thoughts are on MBA associates as a career, I mean, you can get paid really well. And if you're good and you pick it up fast, you can progress. I'd say right now is one of the best times to be in banking for progressing up if you're good. There's a ton of deal experience. You're going to get a ton of deal experience. So deal flows at record highs. It's insane. John says, would enjoy more sales and trading content. Or Johan from Instagram. Cool, man. I'm not sorry. I don't have a ton of that. I'm not a former sales and trader, but we have a ton of it on WSO. Lots of Q&As on there. I've interviewed a ton of people on the WSO podcast who have sales and trading backgrounds. So I'd encourage you to check that out. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, real quick. I don't know if you guys saw this. We have a 2-day financial modeling bootcamp coming up this weekend. There's only 30 seats available. So if you are interested in getting kind of some hands-on instruction, it's live virtual. So it's the June 5th. Yeah, June 5th and 6th. This Saturday and Sunday coming up. You'll see a green bar at the bottom of Wall Street Oasis saying reserve your seat, or you can find it under training here. You can go to live public boot camps, and that'll bring you here. So just a heads up that's coming up. And we also have in June, now that we're in June, wow, I can't believe we're in June. We have not just the financial modeling boot camps, we also have a private equity interview 1-day boot camp. That's going to be on June 19th, and then the day after, that's a Saturday, June 20th, we have a real estate modeling 4-hour boot camp, which is brand new. Really excited about that. We were able to price it super low because the guy that's going to be helping us teach it, he agreed to do it for free. So what's up? We were able to pass on those savings to you guys and really keep it low. I mean, we're still providing a ton of resources in there in a super detailed case. It's a 4-hour boot camp. So people who are interested in real estate finance, check that out. The private equity one-day interview bootcamp includes the $300 private equity interview course, so it's really only an extra $200 for the full 8-hour bootcamp. So you guys compare these prices to any other prices out there, from any of these other places that are doing bootcamps. We're about like anywhere from 30% to 50% less expensive. So and the people we're hiring to do these are the top of the top. These are literally the best investment bankers, private equity professionals, real estate professionals. So don't go pay extra because you think you're going to get a better instructor somewhere else. That's not the case. We have over 830,000 members on WSO, and we have access, over 1 million visits. We have access to the best of the best. So if you are looking for live training because you think it's important to you in terms of forcing you to actually get through the material, check us out on /events, wallstreetwaces.com/events. You can see everything there. It has everything from the office hours to the podcast getting launched to these boot camps. All right, little plug there. Don't want this to be an ad. I want it to be about you guys. So let's go back. Ice Cream Meme says, what's your thoughts of a private equity internship off cycle in hopes of landing a bulge bracket investment banking internship for junior summer? Ice Cream Meme's easy. If you can get it, get it. I'm very much a fan of stacking internships. If you can make it meaningful and actually get something relevant. You want to be a little bit careful if you're going for an investment banking role. You don't want to necessarily have like private equity, because then the bank's going to be like, well, it looks like you just want to go to private equity. But if you can have something like a banking internship and a private equity internship, by all means, stack it. Get it, do an internship off cycle, make it work with your classes. Anything you can make your resume stand out, especially if you're like a liberal arts major or not a finance and accounting major. Those are even more important to make sure that you're branding yourself as a finance guy or gal. So let's keep going. Let's see. Go back to YouTube. Let's see, what did Ahmed say? Ahmed says, I have an internship at a hedge fund, Balyasny Asset Management. Congrats, Balyasny is a great fund. How should I network with the people there if I want to go into investment banking? I'm an incoming freshman, by the way. Wow, Ahmed. Congrats on that internship. How should I network with the people there if I want to go into investment banking? So, Ahmed, I wouldn't, when you're there, what you want to make sure you don't do is seem too over eager, especially since you're so young. You're an incoming freshman. So like you saying, I know I want to do investment banking right now, can come across the wrong way, can come across as try hard. So the way you should really go into your hedge fund at Balyasny is definitely not telling them you want to go into investment banking. And you should definitely be going into that just having an open mind and asking questions about them. So when you're networking with people, you don't network with them a certain way. If you want to go into a specific industry, when you're this young, when you're as young as you are and you have as much time as you do, you really should just be going in with completely an open mind and just curiosity about them and about their career, and try to basically make it so they like you, period. Because then later on down the road, let's say 6 months or your sophomore year, you can go back to that person. They'd like you, say, I've been really thinking, I really enjoyed my time at Balyasny, but I've been looking a little bit more into investment banking. I think long term I want to do get back to the hedge fund and maybe come back to Balyasny. But I'm thinking, some of the training at the banks might be great for me. By the way, do you happen to know anybody that maybe I should speak with? And you can do that during your internship. I just don't want you as an incoming freshman to come across as too try hard and be too pushy. Especially since you don't need to. There's no rush right now, and it should be all about just meeting people and making a connection with them and talking about things other than finance. So keep that in mind. Try not to be too serious. The fact that you have that internship as coming in to freshman year is a great sign. So now I think try to switch the mindset of like go to friendships, relationships, because if you're able to pair those two things of like knowing your path and knowing where you want to go, but building up true relationships, it's going to be incredibly powerful. As you get into your sophomore and junior year, you're going to have a ton of opportunities because people are going to respect you for just your drive and your intellect, but they're going to respect you also because you know how to build relationships. You need both. All right, let's keep going. All right, I'm going to go back to YouTube because I feel like I'm neglecting my YouTube people. And by the way, people on Instagram, you can always join me on the YouTube live stream. I'm showing my screen, so when I do pull up stuff, you can see it. But you're fine if you want to just stick on Instagram. Let's see what happens here. Okay, J-Dog Roxing, coming from a NESCAC school. It's investment banking, New York, summer analyst. J-Dog, I went to Williams. I'm curious where you went, but any advice on how to prepare for an IB internship with liberal arts background? I never even had an investment banking internship. I really could have used one because I know when I started full time, I suffered coming from a liberal arts background, not having the accounting and finance background, and the training's not enough. I would highly recommend you join either this boot camp or the financial modeling and valuation 2-day boot camp, or you just do self-study with the elite modeling package or any of these other packages. I think it's really important for someone from a liberal arts background, not because you won't survive and they don't train you, but just because having seen it when you're going to training, if it's the second and third time you've seen it, it's just that much easier, and you're not as far behind as the kids from Wharton or from other finance schools. So you definitely have the intellect. I'm sure if you're coming from a NESCAC school and you got an IB New York summer analyst spot, I'm sure you're super sharp. You can pick it up fast, but just you don't want the summer analyst internship to be the first time you're seeing it. So I would highly recommend doing some sort of financial modeling training. Anyways, so that's good. Let's see here. All right, here we go. What else we got? So I got a couple more minutes, guys. Yeah, a couple more minutes. Looking to switch out of corporate finance within a year or two. What are the typical exit opportunities can be leveraged into anything with equity research or asset management? So Koju, if you're in corporate finance and you're looking to get out, I'm not as well versed in this, but if you are looking to go equity research, asset management, I think it's really important that you start building up any sort of online presence where you're talking about specific stocks. Equity research is a huge universe. So is there a specific industry you're really interested in? Can you show that you understand names really well there? I think that would be a great way to kind of demonstrate to people in equity research that you're serious about it. Asset management's a little bit different. You're actually managing money. So I would just try to from corporate finance, yeah, you can definitely get into equity research. Asset management is more about just building up those connections, like I always say. So, yeah, just do that. You're welcome, Ahmed. Let's see here. What else we got here? Let's see here. I'm going back to Instagram. Ryan Scott do middle markets and lower middle market investment banks have special situation groups? The best way to seek them out in these smaller firms. Special situations I tend to think of as more like hedge fund type roles. I think special situations I think of more like you're trading event driven or special situations. I don't think there's, or maybe you're meeting like distressed restructuring groups. So yeah, some of these firms actually have dedicated restructuring teams. So like a Rothschild, a Houlihan has a really strong restructuring practice, Blackstone, a few others, but you could do a quick search. I'll pull it up here. Best restructuring. Let's see here, best restructuring groups. Top restructuring groups, 2016, 2019. Here we go. We got 66 comments here. Let's see what people say. Okay, PJT, Lazard, Evercore, Houlihan, Guggenheim, Moelis, Centerview, Miller Buck Fire, Greenhill, Rothschild, Jefferies. Yeah, I'd agree with most of those. You even have somebody here who ranks them. Definitely got a little bit of controversial. 28 silver bananas and 8 monkey shits. Some of the people at the bottom of tier 3 probably not very happy, but it gives you an idea. It's one person's opinion, and did get upvoted a lot, and people thought it was relatively accurate. So that's a good place to look in terms of, there are some middle market firms in there. And then what you can do if you're thinking middle market or lower middle market and trying to figure out, what are some of these banks that nobody knows about that do special situations or restructuring? You can find people that previously worked at these firms and see if they're now at tiny or smaller firms. Odds are that tiny or smaller firm is a restructuring shop or a shop specializing in restructuring. So that's a great way to find kind of unknown smaller firms that you may not hear about on the forums. Sometimes there's just one partner, one VP or associate, and that's it, and that's the whole firm. And maybe you can convince them to take you on as an analyst or as another associate because they're busy and they have a lot of deal flow. That can be a pretty good way to get your foot in the door, especially if you show a lot of knowledge around restructuring and special situations, and you really understand bankruptcy. You understand Chapter 11 versus Chapter 7. You understand how leveraging the capital structure, all that good stuff. Here we go. What do you think is more valuable an experience in transaction services, due diligence or restructuring for IB? I'm biased. I'm going to say restructuring for IB. It depends. If you're looking to go to more like a credit shop or a distressed debt hedge fund or private equity fund, I'd say definitely restructuring. If you're looking to go eventually for like more of a traditional like M&A shop, a transition to M&A type group, maybe due diligence, since you're getting a little bit more of the background of like specific deals, and you're probably getting more engagements faster, meaning they're turning around faster, where the restructuring engagements tend to stretch out a little bit more. So I would say kind of depends on where you want to end up. How to build relationships. Leonard, there's a book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Is that what it's called? Or Never Eat Alone. There's a couple great books you should read about how to build relationships. I would definitely read those. Hey dude, say my name if you can. What? Not Blackstone, Patrick. It's PJT. Yeah, sorry, I'm old. I'm old down to finance. I still have the old names in my head. Yeah, Ryan said, I heard Goldman has special situations group, so I wasn't sure if it was unique to Goldman or common across IB. Thanks, Patrick. Hey, Ryan, I'm not that well versed in the special situations groups. I would definitely do some searches on the forum, see if you can find anything. Miguel asks a great question. Miguel Caio says, how do I prepare for behavioral questions without memorizing? So one thing I really like to do, so Miguel, in the investment banking interview course we go through this in detail, but you basically, what you want to do is you want to have like a set of anywhere from 5 to 8 different stories. So think of it as like this stack of 8 different stories. Sorry, my fingers, if you can see this for everybody. And basically these stories should be like memorized in the sense of, exactly what's the situation, what was the task, what was the action, and what was the result. That's STAR, STAR. Situation, task, action, result, and what happened. And so each of these stories should have kind of 4 main parts. So 8 stories, 4 main parts each. Those are memorized in terms of the sequence. And the only reason you have STAR is so you don't get lost and go on a tangent and just completely mess up your flow in an interview. So you should absolutely be prepared and have those stories ready to go, because the worst thing you can do is when somebody asks you something and you tell them you're a hard worker instead of showing them you're a hard worker. So why should we hire you instead of other people? That's just why you. That's a why you question. Basically, after hearing a ton of these different types of behavioral questions, you start understanding there's certain sets of groups of these questions. So What makes you think you can handle the hours? Or why should we pick you? All these things can go toward one bucket of like strengths and or hard work or multitasking type stories. Another one of weaknesses versus struggles versus conflicts can go to another set of stories. So what you want to do is make sure you have enough stories, enough redundancy in there built in, so that if you pick a story and then they ask another question similar to that bucket, you're not left scrambling with no other stories to tell, that you can pick another one from that bucket without running out. And so you need some conflict stories. You need some, how did you work through how did you work through something that was tough on a moral basis, like a moral crisis, like, oh, somebody told you to lie or cheat or whatever. What did you do there? What did you do when there was conflict with superior or a peer? You need stories. This can come from group class projects. This can come from your internship, any other previous internships. This can come from This can come from your extracurricular activities, from associations, whatever. The point is, you want to have these stories ready and always bring it back to the skills and why you'd be a good candidate. So a lot of people will prepare and memorize these answers like they're robots. What's a better way to prepare is what I think is, you have the stories in your head, you write out bullets for STAR, situation, task, action, result. Write out bullets. So 1 to 2 bullets for each of those. Read those and then practice saying them out loud, but don't write it out word for word. It's a huge disaster you write out word for word, because then as you're delivering it real time, instead of thinking of the next idea or phrase to talk about, you're thinking of the words. And so you're thinking of the words to deliver instead of the feeling and the story. And so I think it really hurts people when they've memorized the words, and then if they get thrown off at all, the person interrupts them, they're like, oh no. They don't even know where to pick back up. They're thinking, oh man, I was in the middle of a sentence. Should I go back? It's a disaster. So a lot of people, they think that memorizing everything is going to help ease their nerves. The more important thing is to think of, have each of these stories as like an arsenal ready to pull out as much as you can. And so like as soon as they start asking you a question, in your brain, it's not thinking, what should I answer? It's what story? What story does this map to? So it's training your brain to think, where does this map to immediately? And grabbing that story and immediately pulling it up. Be like, well, that reminds me of a time when blah, 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 blah. This situation happened. This is the task we were given. This is what I did. This is what I did to try to remedy it. And this was the result. And I really feel like that illustrates why I'm a hard worker. I work well with teams. How I deal with conflict. Blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, that's important. A lot of people don't develop that skill. And so after you actually have those stories, you've practiced those stories, and so many people totally neglect this, and they're not as good as the people who do this. But once you have all those stories, once you have those bullets, and then you actually practice it, you got to practice it. You can't just have those stories, do all that work, and then not do 1 mock interview or 2 mock interviews. No, you got to have practice actually mapping, because the hardest part is knowing where to map what questions. As soon as they're coming out, once they're halfway out of the interviewer's mouth, you should already know what story you're going to talk about. You should already know what story you're going to talk about. If you're searching there and sitting there, and it's okay if it's a tough question, you're not really sure where to map it, and you take a few seconds and you're there, it's okay if it's like kind of a weird one and it takes a while to map it, but you definitely don't want to be like searching for a new story that you're coming off with on the top of your head. That's a total recipe for disaster. Sometimes you might have to do that if they keep asking from the same bucket, but that's a bad situation to be in, and it's really uncomfortable. So that's what I would suggest. Good question, Miguel. You're thinking about it the right way. Let's see what else we got here. Yes, I can confirm. Do not memorize. Been there, done that. Hey, Dom. Yeah, I do have a podcast. You can see it on WSO. You can find it there. Just type in Wall Street Oasis podcast on iTunes or Spotify. I think it's there. I basically just interview a bunch of successful finance professionals, but not like super senior people you can't relate to. It's mostly like in the associate to VP, MD range. Mostly associate to VP, people who've gone like banking to private equity to hedge funds to corporate finance, corp dev, people from non-targets, targets, you name it, or just, people who broke in from very unexpected backgrounds. Let's see what else we got. Let's see. Hey, Jeff. Yeah, I did get your sample newsletter. Sorry about the delay getting back to you. I'll take a look. Jeff's referring to, we are interviewing newsletter writers right now for our new daily newsletter that's going to be coming out sometime later this summer called The Daily Peel. It should be a market-oriented newsletter, which should be a lot of fun, and try to give people insight into the daily happenings. I'm actually going to run. I just realized I'm late for a call, but thank you all again for joining the WSO Office Hours, and hopefully this was helpful. I know I kind of went on some rants, but the monkeys all say bye. Say bye. 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 The blue monkey says bye too. Bye, guys. Love you all. Thanks for joining.